Anciently, there was only one Sundance at one location, and everybody went to that one location. This is a sacred area outside the Black Hills in a place called Matotipila. You know where that's at? Matotipila? I'm not going to tell you. It goes by a different name when you look at it on the map. They made a movie there a long time ago. It has this song, da 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 da. That movie. Remember that? That's Matotipila. Okay? Alrighties. Anyway, that was the location where they did the Sundance. They did that, just one location. It's not like today. Shit, today everybody has one different places and everything. They say, yeah, those guys do it wrong and don't go over there. And some people charge money to do that. It's crazy. It's just a circus today. It's just really, really a circus atmosphere when you go to some of these Sundances. It's just crazy. There's so many protocols people break today that it's just ridiculous. It's just lost its meaning, and nobody knows the origin of these things. I mean, hardly anybody does. A lot of people call themselves medicine men today, but they don't know jack shit. And then non-Indians, when they meet somebody that says, yeah, he's a medicine man, or somebody says to them, I'm a medicine man, they believe it without question. Why? Why do you believe everything that people say? Just because he's Indian, do you think that means he's going to always tell the truth? That's bullshit. Indians are liars too. Indians are thieves too. Indians are killers and rapists. There's good and bad in every skin color, in every culture. So, if you're non-Indian and you really think highly of Indian people, why would you believe everything every Indian says? That's a communication. And that's reflecting what you're like too. That means you don't take the time to check things out, which means you didn't do that to yourself, so you don't really know yourself either. So like attracts like. And you're going to get taken advantage of. 100%. I guarantee it. Just keep that in mind. Sometimes people will say they're holy men and they can't even speak Lakota. How can you be a holy man if you can't speak Lakota? And even then, there's a sacred version of our language. And how do you know what it sounds like? Because it sounds different. I can't speak it for you because that's a sacred thing. But it will freak you out when you hear it. The holy language is Wakan Lakota. Wakan, a lot of people think that means sacred, but it really means more than that. Wakan is like sacred energy of life, or sacred life-giving energy. That's Wakan. So it's more than sacred. It's alive. Wakan Lakota is really a sacred language. It doesn't sound like regular Lakota, as I said. So some people like to say they're holy men, but they don't even know these things. How can you be a holy man and not know these things? A lot of guys like that, like to impress white women and say that. They know how to do a sweat lodge ceremony. They go out to the West Coast or the East Coast or Colorado or Arizona, the Sedona area where all these New Agers are. Set themselves up as prophets, basically. They can't even speak Lakota. So it's really a crazy world today in the Indian world. Those of you that are really interested in Lakota language and culture, what's happening on the reservation is really, really incorrect. I mean, there is some people that are staying true to form, but most are not. Most are not. And there's all kinds of protocol you have to follow. Like, for example, when you go to a Sundance, if you're a woman and you're going to watch, you have to wear a dress. And it has to be a long dress. It's not supposed to be a mini skirt. And you're not supposed to wear anything that shows cleavage. And you can't show your shoulders either. Same thing for men. They're not supposed to be walking around with tank tops and just the sun dancers themselves don't wear shirts. But if you're in the audience, you have to dress with respect, because dressing is a communication too. How you dress is a reflection of the kind of person that you are. If you're a woman, you can't be having your period during that time. If you have your period, somebody's going to know, because there's real holy people that do come to these events, and they will know when there's a woman there who's having her period and she's trying to pretend or she's trying to hide it or whatever. Holy people know, so they will escort you out of the area. You have to leave. You cannot be there. That's the original way. Here today, what they do is they put a teepee a little bit away from the Sundance area, and they call this the Moon Lodge. And all women who are having their periods during the Sundance, they have to stay in there. I think that's stupid. Bunch of women in PMS and trapped in the teepee all day long. Who in the hell made that shitty rule up? That never existed. So if you go to a Sundance and you ask, hey, where's the Moon Lodge? And if they say it's over there, just get in your car and get the hell out of there, because that's a bullshit ceremony. Seriously. Because a real Sundance does not have a Moon Lodge. Because, see, the Sundance has to do with the cycle of a man. The moon has to do with the cycle of a woman. So the Moon Lodge should not be there, because the sun and the moon are divorced, and they're not supposed to look at each other. This is why there's not supposed to be a Moon Lodge. But see, this kind of information, a lot of people, they don't know this. And the reason why is because of what happened on the early days of the reservation. We got brainwashed by Christianity. It was a forced thing. And then about 20 years later, the children were sent to boarding schools hundreds of miles away, and they were tortured if they even spoke about their home. So when those children grew up, they didn't want their children to go through that torture. So they didn't teach them the language, they didn't teach them the culture. So today, hardly anybody speaks their language. And this is the reason why people don't know the complete versions of stories and ceremonies. So what they know is like a story or a ceremony, but with a bunch of gaps in it. They don't know what goes there. So they fill it up with their own ideas. But the trouble is that their ideas are based on Christian thinking. And even if they don't go to church, they still think in a dualistic way. What they're missing in this ceremony, they fill it up with a dualistic concept. And that ruins the ceremony. So whenever you hear somebody talking about good spirits and bad spirits, that's not traditional. That's modern. As people say, yeah, burn sage and smudge yourself so the bad spirits won't get to you. That's incorrect. That's Catholic thinking there. People smudge themselves to calm themselves down. There are energies out there that are kind of unhealthy, kind of disrupting, but this is not evil. Unhealthy and evil are not the same thing. So the sage, when you smudge yourself, that's to help you tune into yourself. And it kind of energizes the air. It smells good. And it makes people feel a certain way. It puts people in a certain mindset. It's relaxing. It's spiritual. It's prayerful. That's the reason why they do it. In ancient times, they didn't do that to chase away evil spirits, because there's no such thing. In the ancient Lakota way, there's no such thing. I'll talk a little bit about this. I'll explain why more in detail how come today most Indians think they know the traditional way, but what they really know is something that's incorrect. And most of what they know is incorrect and dualistic. It's not the ancient way. There's a journey that happens for certain people. It starts with a Heyoka. A Heyoka is a man who dreams of thunder and lightning constantly. And even when he's awake, seems like there's always thunder and lightning wherever he goes. So he's getting a little bit concerned. I would too, yeah. So he has to go talk to a holy person to find out what is this. Because it might be a call from the thunder being, Wakia, for that man to become Heyoka. Wakia is something like a hermaphrodite. She's both male and female. When she expresses her male side, then he is Heyoka. He is called Heyoka. Heyoka does everything backwards. They walk backwards. They have their clothes on backwards, inside out too. They put their hair in front of their face. When they come into a room and they're going to say something, they walk in backwards and they say goodbye. I hate all of you and I hope all of you die today. Hello. Then he walks out. So you have to interpret that. What he really said is, hello, I love all of you, and I wish all of you to have a long life, and see you later. That's what he means. So it's the opposite. Yeah, it's the opposite. So you have to be aware of those kind of things when a Heyoka is around. Why do only men become Heyoka? Because women have 3 additional stages of development. In the beginning, everybody had 4 stages of development, but something happened and women received 3 more, and that threw the balance off. So for thousands of years, women were above men. Then mankind received 3 ceremonies to come back into balance with women. And this is the reason why women in their childbearing years, they're not supposed to do these 3 ceremonies. Because if they do, that's like ripping their hearts out and throwing it on the ground. So it's not that when a man says that only men are supposed to be doing these 3 ceremonies, it's not being exclusive. It's not that women are less. It's not that at all. It's the total opposite. Men have to do those ceremonies to come back into balance with women. For women, it's inside. For men, it's outside. You see what I mean? Those 3 ceremonies are the Sundance, the Sweat Lodge ceremony, and the crying for a vision. Women in their childbearing years are not supposed to do those ceremonies. And after you go through menopause, then you can. That's the same rule for holding a pipe and having a drum. This is also the same reason why only men can be Heyoka. It's not because they're better. It's because this is things they have to do. See, Wakia is the feminine and Heyoka is the masculine. And it's the same being. Wakia cleanses. She comes to the earth and she cleanses so that things can grow. A Heyoka is doing the same thing, but in reverse. So when you see the work of a Heyoka, it makes you laugh. And laughter is medicine. It cleanses you. You see what I mean? So they're doing the same thing, just in different ways. So that's why only men can be Heyoka. So this journey starts in February. We have a constellation that looks like a pipe bowl. Now, when the sun's path goes through this pipe bowl constellation, in February they have to go cut red willow. They have to get bark off the red willow tree. This is what they're going to use in their pipes for the next year. This is not nicotine stuff. This is not the same thing as that's in cigarettes. You're not supposed to be putting cigarette tobacco inside pipes. You're not supposed to put marijuana in pipes either. You only put this red willow bark. It's called chanshasha. That's what you put in there. So you do that. And then the next constellation that goes through the sun's path, it's a landmark that's in the Black Hills. And it's called Heyoka. And this is where they call back the thunder. So this is where they need the Heyoka. That's why I explained what that was. So Heyokas call back the thunders. Now, how do you think he's going to do it? Heyokas have the connection to the thunder and lightning. So a Heyoka clothes are decorated with thunder and lightning. But it's a certain way. So you don't just draw what you think looks like lightning. They paint on themselves. The Lakota way of drawing lightning, they call the thunders. So there's a group of people that do this. It's not supposed to be the whole tribe. Then, from Heyoka, they go into the center of the Black Hills to an area called Tresla. There's two reasons why nobody lived there. And they only did one ceremony a year there. Some young Lakota people like to say, yeah, they did ceremonies there all year long, since time immemorial. No, that's false. Totally false. You're not supposed to do a sweat lodge ceremony there. You're not supposed to do a Sundance there. You're not supposed to do anything like that there. There's only one ceremony that's allowed, and this is another calling back. This is calling back the animals, calling back the birds that went south, waking up the bears that are hibernating. They do this after they leave Heyoka. So this is around March. So then, from this Tresla location, they split into two groups. One group goes to Matro-Tipila, and the other group goes south towards Colorado area. And they're going to the Rocky Mountains. More like what today is called the Grand Tetons. More in that area. And there they get volcano rocks. And the group that goes to Matro-Tipila, that's north. What they're going to do is they're going to prepare this area for the Sundance that's going to be held on summer solstice. So there's a lot of preparation they have to do because thousands and thousands of Lakota people are going to show up. They only had one Sundance in those days. And that was the location because this is sacred for that. So they're going to spend several months getting everything together. Yeah, so these are probably the bachelors, yeah? Or men with bossy wives, yeah? Shoot. Anyway, so the group that goes south, they get a lot of volcano rocks because they're going to use those volcano rocks in the sweat lodge ceremonies that are part of the Sundance ceremony. It's actually 12 days. 4 days preparation. That's when the Sundancers separate themselves from their families. And the fourth day of preparation is Tree Day. The first day of dancing started summer solstice. And that goes for 4 days. Piercing happens on the third and fourth day. And then after the fourth day of dancing is over, there's a 4-day conclusion. So the dancers stay away from their families for 12 days. The first 4 days is to get into the Sundance frame of mind. The conclusion 4 days are to slowly return to normal life. So that's how they used to do that. So there's a lot of sweat lodge ceremonies that are going to happen. So that's why they bring these rocks. These volcano rocks have a really long-lasting effect inside of the sweat lodge. Remember, the lava rocks come from inside the earth. Lava is the blood of Grandmother Earth. Some people say it's water. No, it's not. It's lava. Remember, blood is red, so keep that in mind. So this is why they want these rocks, because these are very ancient. There's ancient energies inside of those rocks, and that's what they want inside these sweat lodge ceremonies for the sun dancers. So they get a whole bunch of those, then they go up north and meet that other group. And then they help the other group finish preparations. When the meadowlarks come back, these are birds that really sing pretty songs. They say that over and over and over. That's their song, yeah? They say they speak Lakota, yeah? And that means buffalo calf liver is good to eat. It's delicious. This is a delicacy. When you eat buffalo calf liver, it really makes you feel good. And it's the same feeling you get when you hear these meadowlark birds when they're coming back. Because they come back when it's not going to snow anymore. So that's the signal that winter is over. And that's also the signal to slowly prepare to get ready to go to Matotipila. So people are getting ready to do these things. And how do they know when to do these ceremonies? It's because the locations where these ceremonies are conducted have star constellations. And when the sun's path goes through that constellation, they have to go to that location on the earth and do that ceremony there. This is why the Sundance ceremony is supposed to be done on summer solstice. But today people do it in July and August. Some even do it at the beginning of September. It's just ridiculous today. In the extra time, I'll explain why are people not doing it the original way. I will tell you why. But let me talk a little bit more about this. When the meadowlarks come back and sing their song, people are supposed to get ready. And when the sun's path hits a certain constellation in the stars, that's the signal to begin the trip to Matotipila and to get there by summer solstice. The sun dancers have to get there earlier because they have 4 days of preparation. So this was what they used to do. They only had one Sundance ceremony a year, and it was at one location. And everybody showed up at the same Sundance. So it was a huge event. And after the Sundance is over, the 12 days, when that's all over, then everybody travels to Matopaha. I'm just saying the Lakota terms. They travel to Matopaha, and there they're going to have the Lakota Nation government meeting. Also, the social time. So a lot of times marriages will happen during that time. It's really a fun time because they just got done doing the Holy of Holies ceremony, and so then now they're heading to Bear Butte to celebrate. Then after that, this is the beginning of July is when that time period is. And then people return to their territories and wait for that signal to come up in the stars in September. Then they know it was good. It's pretty cool, yeah? And the story with the starmen and the star people that took that chief's arm, that story, remember, that's between the Sicangu Lakota people and these people from the stars. So this story is saying that there was years of communication between these two peoples. And remember, I told you the 2 marriages that happened between Lakota women and 2 men from one of the star worlds. So that means there's Sicangu Lakota people somewhere out there. And they're star people among the Sicangu Lakota people. And this is why the Sicangu Lakota know the star knowledge. My dad is from there, so I'm half Sicangu Lakota. So that's how I know these things. Now, I'll explain why more in detail. How come today most Indians think they know the traditional way, but what they really know is something that's incorrect. And most of what they know is incorrect and dualistic. It's not the ancient way. I'll explain why are people not doing it the original way. I will tell you why. Back in the late 1800s, when we were placed on reservations, there were prison camps in the beginning. And this is a situation where we couldn't leave. We were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us. And we were only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that. But once it got to some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it. And then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. So what we got on a reservation was bullshit food. It was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. These are the 4 parts of the self. So with the 4 parts of the self being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan. They come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now, another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota star knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine men, medicine women, holy men, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so it was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside they weren't. They were star knowledge people. They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret thanks to them, they passed it down to certain people like me, and we still have this knowledge, and I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center, and we all have that. This is not a Lakota thing, this is a Ikje Oyate thing. Ikje Oyate means human being. When you live this way, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German, or a Japanese, or an African. You communicate as a human. That's really important to know. So, that's how it was back then. Now remember I said that the priest said to the Indians, we will help your children. So, they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. The pay was really low. So they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now had their pick of the litter, and they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered, they were killed, they were raped, they were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through, what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because they were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how, because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people, teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with, because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult, healthy role models to emulate. And remember I said these children were told that their families were all dead, so they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people, because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turned to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turned to alcohol. and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. They missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development, because the parents don't know how to do it. All they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. As a whole, we're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized, dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this video. I really appreciate it. And if you would like to send a special thanks in support of this channel, look at the bottom of this video where the title is, and right under that, where it says like, dislike, and share, right in that area, slide it towards the left, and you will see the symbols change, and then you will see a heart-shaped button that says thanks on it. If you would like to click on there to send your thanks of support, I would really appreciate it, as I really do enjoy making these videos and speaking with you and spending some time with you. So again, thank you very much for listening. To learn more about Lakota spirituality, I have written a book called Wichocha Otechike. This book also includes Lakota star knowledge information. All the videos that I make, which are about Lakota spirituality, Lakota star knowledge, and cultural information, are based on this book. This book costs 99 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And to learn more about Lakota language, I have written a Lakota language book called Chante Etanha Owoglake, Speaking from the Heart. And all my Lakota language videos are based on this book. This book costs 119 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. I also teach online, and I give spiritual consultations as well. If you are interested in any of my services and products, you can send payment via PayPal to my email address, which is heyoka7@yahoo.com. That's HEHAKA, the number 7@yahoo.com. When you send your payment, please include your shipping address and your email address. Ho, lila pilamayelo. Thank you very much. In the Lakota way, everything is circular. As a result, we do not have a word for goodbye in the Lakota language, and so instead we say until next time, which in Lakota is Doksha Ake. And I will catch you in the next video.